In this episode of the Campcast, I'm going to give my thoughts with spoilers on Season 4 of Chaos Theory. So stick around until after the intro to hear what I have to say. Hello and welcome to the Cretaceous Campcast. I am Cretaceous Dave, and this is a podcast all about Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous and Jurassic World Chaos Theory. Well, the day is finally here, everyone. Season 4, the final season of Chaos Theory, has arrived on Netflix, and I do hope you've watched it. If you have not, please stop watching this on YouTube or listening to the audio podcast. This is going to be spoiler filled. These are my thoughts. I guess if you want to call it a review, it's a review. It's more talking points that I just wanted to talk about this season, but it will be full of spoilers. So once again, if you have not watched all of season 4 yet, please turn this off. Do not watch or listen anymore, and then come back after you have watched the season. This is going to be your last chance to get out. Like I said, this is going to have spoilers. All right? We good? Okay. So hopefully if you're still listening, you have already seen season 4 of Chaos Theory. Hopefully you guys have all had a chance to check out my spoiler-free review, which was posted just a few days ago. But here we are, November 20th. The show is officially out, and I don't know. What do you all think? Like I said in my spoiler-free review, I'm still on the fence. This might be my favorite of all 9 seasons of the shows. I've watched it 3 times so far, and it is pretty incredible. I was going to do like a regular review, but I wasn't happy with the way things came out. I took a lot of notes on my second watch of the show, and as I was recording things, I felt kind of forced and like I was just reading off a list. So I kind of don't want to do that. That's not really the way I do things. I kind of like talking. Now I do have a few notes in front of me just so I don't forget any, major talking points or whatever, but I'm not just going to read like off a list and then talk about it. It just didn't sound natural. It didn't sound me. So I'm going to do something a little bit different than what I originally had planned and originally had recorded. So apologies if you're expecting like a real review. That's not what this is. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I really liked about it. And if you want to call it a review, sure, it's a review. To me, it's more just talking points with spoilers of season 4 of Chaos Theory. So let's go over some of the things in detail that I talked about in the spoiler-free review. And the first thing I mentioned was the season was emotional. And after watching it, I'm sure you can see what I was talking about. Let's start with the really big one, the Ben storyline. I would be lying if I didn't say I teared up a couple times the first time watching it. And even knowing what happened, watching it again, it still really hit me. It's like in the gut that it gets you in the later episodes, because I honest to goodness thought he was going to die. Based on some of the comments about not everyone gets out unscathed, you knew someone was going to be in some serious trouble, but I really, really thought they were going to kill him off, and they had you up until the last moment really thinking they did. And I thought the writing and the storytelling about Ben was so good that there were a lot of times you're like, okay, they're going to save him, and then something happened to prevent that from happening, like the power going out in the Hyperloop, and then it had to go back because it reset when the power came back on, so he wasn't getting to where he needed to go, sort of thing. And it really, really got to me. I was genuinely concerned, and I was worried for him, and I got really sad. And then even at the very end of the season, in that little epilogue that they had, I guess if you want to call it an epilogue, when I noticed his beanie on the table when everyone was getting together, and I was like, holy cow, this is like a memorial for him. They're putting his beanie out. What would be his seat at the table? And I had spoiler alert for the interview I have coming up with Scott, which will be posted probably within the next few days. I don't want to bombard everybody with content like day after day after day after day. So maybe on Monday I'll post that. We'll see. But we do talk about this a little bit, and it was very intentional with the end, with the black car and Gia wearing black and stuff like that. So up until the very last second, they really had me thinking that he was dead. And I'm not going to say any more about what Scott has to say about that. You can check that out in the interview when I post it. It was great, and I'm glad I got to talk about the Ben story a little bit with him. But on the other emotional side of things, how great was the Smoothie story? Finally reuniting with Bumpy, and then we get to meet Smoothie's dad. That was so unexpected. It was so cool to see. It was very cute. It was very heartwarming. Smoothie once again stole the show. Such a cute little guy, and he held his own against a Dilophosaurus, which was pretty awesome. And yeah, so that had the joy and the happiness going on. And something else that brought a lot of emotion out to me was the various relationships throughout the season. And they come in all different forms. And the big one for me was Brooklyn mending her relationships with just about everybody. You know, she worked things out with Darius, but at the very beginning, in episode 1, we saw how upset Darius was, and a lot of that had to do with the way she treated Ernest, and then him thinking back about everything she did to all of them. And we could talk about Ernest in a minute. Very unexpected, but you know, you saw it really hit him when she called Ernest a dino nerd, and it was hard for him. And I think they both realized, you know, eventually, you know, how close they were, how much they mean to each other, and the mending of that relationship. And then she got to mend the relationship with Kenji, and they both kind of agreed, like, hey, you know, we love each other, but this was just not right, sort of thing. And she also got to mend the relationship with Sammy, and it was great. I loved seeing how nice all of the mending of Brooklyn's relationships worked out, and nothing felt forced or in your face. Everything seemed very natural the way that they worked them out, and I'm glad they worked everything out, because I don't think I would have been as happy overall with the season if they left anybody still on bad terms. I could understand if they did. It would have been kind of a bold writing move, but I'm glad everybody worked everything out in the end, and that includes Yaz and Sammy. From the moment the two groups got back together in episode 3, it was almost like those two were never apart to begin with. Yeah, I guess you can kind of consider it a slow build throughout the season back to officially being a relationship, but you saw it immediately. There was a lot of flirtiness going on, a lot of fun back and forth, and there was a moment really early where it looked like they were about to kiss and they got interrupted. And then finally later, almost at the end of the season, you know, they do kiss again and they make up. And it was great to see that. And I've always said they are the most realistic relationship in the franchise. It was a long build-up. Anyone that says it felt forced and out of nowhere, I 100% disagree. They were building that relationship from season 1 of Camp Cretaceous, and in season 3 is where it really took off, and you can really tell they had feelings for each other, especially Yaz having feelings for Sammy. But all relationships aren't smiles and sunshine and roses, and people have problems. And they had their own issues, both in season 1 with Yaz being at school and them kind of being a little distant, and then again in season 3 where they decided to break up. Not for very long, thankfully, but I say it was done in a way that makes it very realistic. That a relationship like Ben and Gia, to me, is an animated show relationship. It's very fake. I think when I was talking to Kia about it, we called it the honeymoon phase, that everything is just perfect, and no relationships are really like that. Yaz and Sammy, I think, have the perfect example of this is what a real relationship is like. Can disagree with me if you want, and that's okay. It's just my opinion, and I'm glad that they got them back together. And might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm glad they kind of built up to it too. I didn't want it like, oh, we're broken up. Oh, we're back together. So it was nice kind of seeing it progress and them having fun and being themselves. And I think they needed that to get back together. So that was one of the other things that, I covered when I was talking about emotions, that it was great seeing that. Just of course, all the various relationships, especially the stuff with Brooklyn, but Yaz and Sammy as well. And of course, like I started off with, the Ben stuff, that was really big. It was really unexpected at first, but then we saw that one picture of him hunched over with the Therizinosaurus behind him, and then everybody's all speculating, like, what happens to Ben? Does Ben die? I didn't think they were going to draw it out like they did. I didn't think it was going to be as serious, and everything about that, when they cut to the different scenes of Ben, was just so emotional that I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but the score changes and it's absolutely beautiful, and a lot of the visuals around it make it very sad and impactful. And overall, the show looks beautiful, it sounds beautiful, and they did a great job of really making all of the Ben stuff very, very emotional. Apologies if I'm going to jump around a little bit as I talk about stuff. I might just go off on a tangent about that. That's kind of the way I do things, and why I wasn't happy with my first spoiler-filled review that I recorded, because it seemed very scripted and not me. So here I am recording something totally different for you all, and just kind of, shooting it as it's coming, the way I like to do things. But on that topic, let's just take a quick minute to appreciate and say thank you to everybody behind the scenes that made this show. I picked up on a lot of little subtleties after talking to Eric a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I don't even remember how long it was at this point, but recently I had that interview with Eric, super great guy, and I took a lot of what he said into consideration while watching the season. And there were lots of just like little things, like when the camera is looking into the vehicle, that we're seeing it from the perspective of basically the car window, and there were smudges on the window, and I legitimately thought there was a smudge on my TV. I was gonna get up to like wipe off the TV, then I realized, oh no, that's the glass. It's a little bit dirty. And that was really cool. Visually, I think one or two times when the Dilophosaurus spit, we kind of got the like first person perspective of the spit coming, and that looked really, really cool. Sound wise, the score was beautiful. The sound effects were really great in this season. The whole series actually sounded and looked very incredible, but everybody took it up an extra notch in this season, it seems like, and it was just so well done. I paid a little more attention to the score the second and third time, and it's done really well. There are parts of it that are very Dominion, which I really appreciated, because I liked the score of Dominion a lot. So it had a lot of like little hints of Dominion sprinkled in here or there with the score, so I thought that was really cool. So good job to Leo for what he did the entire series, but especially in season 4, I thought it was really great. One thing that Eric had mentioned to me in an email that he said no one has noticed is the series covers all the phases of the moon, so they actually kind of change the phases of the moon throughout the show, so you get sort of a concept of how long things are going on and how long things are taking, that they go from like new moon to full moon, waxing and waning, and I'm not a moon expert, but all of the different phases of the moon that they cycle throughout the series. So I thought that was really cool. I did not notice it, and it's something I want to pay attention to when I go back and rewatch it. What else did I have to say in my spoiler free? Oh, I called it a perfect companion piece to Dominion, and I hope you agree with me. This story is basically, if you asked yourself, what else was Biosyn doing other than hexapod allies? And they do mention hexapod allies once. I think Ben, when he's looking in one of the rooms, it's like hexapod allies hibernation or something like that. And it's basically the only mention of the locusts. And of course, we see the flaming locusts because we need the explanation of why everything is on fire. But I think they realized that's not our story. That story was already told. Our story is what else was Biosyn doing? And I thought they handled it really well. And the primary thing Biosyn was doing was theropod axis. And I thought that was really cool. The whole scene with the training of the Atrociraptors and watching them turn on the scientists because they basically outsmarted them, that they were trained so well. And it was a cool program. And of course, we got to kind of get a little insight into, you know, what the handler was dealing with and her raptors, and of course the Brooklyn story. And then it was interesting to see Wu say, like, hey, this was supposed to be for search and rescue purposes. And then Biosyn turned it into completely something evil and something else. And, you know, it was cool that was what we were focused on this season. This is what else Biosyn was doing. And then after they kind of took care of that by destroying the server, then it turned into a survival story. And it was, we need to get Ben help. We need to get him out of here. Of course, they wanted to all get home. They wanted to reunite Bumpy and Smoothie, but we need to save Ben. And it was great. It was so well executed. And I mentioned that there are a lot of places where you know exactly when you are in Dominion. And, you know, some of the things that that I noticed, sorry, my mind went blank there for a minute. And one of them in particular bothered me a little bit, which I'll explain. But I did take notes just to mark down these to kind of give you the timeline perspective. So in episode 2, they mentioned Malcolm's keynote. So, you know, we saw that in Dominion when Alan and Ellie first show up. Malcolm's giving his speech. So, yeah, when our first group arrives, you know, they just missed Malcolm's keynote. So that's happening right around that same time. And then in episode 3, we get to, we don't see it. We briefly hear it, but we know it's when Maisie and Beta break out of Wu's office. And Wu is all concerned with that. He's working with the other scientists. They're trying to catch them. And then we get, at one point, we hear, I think it's Beta, like, running down the hallway, and they're after it. And, you know, Wu mentions they have bigger things they have to take care of. Now, I don't know if he meant saving the world from the locusts or if he meant getting Beta and Maisie, which he needed for saving the world from the locusts. So either way, you know, they both kind of related, but it was cool that we got to see, like, oh, we just missed them getting away. I was really hoping we saw one or both of them in the show, and I understand now after talking to Scott why we didn't, and you'll hear about that when you watch the interview. And I'm okay with them not including any of the other characters because, spoiler for that interview, it was good that they didn't force somebody in just for the sake of fan service. So I'm okay with them not having any of the movie characters other than Wu and Dodgson in the season. In episode 4, I thought was really cool. We see Kayla's Kayla's plane flying by with the Kets following it. And this is the one thing I had a minor issue with, and it's timeline-wise, it didn't make sense to me on the second watch. The first time, I'm like, that's really cool, that's Kayla's plane. But then the second time, I realized Kayla, Owen, and Claire left Malta before Darius, Yaz, Ben, and Brooklyn left Malta. So I don't know how they were in Biosin Valley first to see the plane fly overhead. The only thing I can think of, and it's an easy way you can write yourself out of it, is, they made a stop before, or they had to refuel, or they needed to do something else. And then that just put them behind, by a couple hours or whatever it was. It doesn't ruin anything for me. It doesn't mess up any kind of canon timeline or anything like that. I just thought it was a little weird the first time I saw it. Or not the first time I saw it, the second time I saw it, and I was making notes of when things happened. And I'm like, wait a minute, they left before them. So how are they there already? Like I said, you can easily explain it away that they just had to stop or had to refuel or something like that. So it doesn't bother me, really. It was just an observation. And then in episode 6, we get the flaming locusts. So we definitely know what's happening there and where we are. In episode 7, we have the remote herding, and they did confirm that it was the Manticore technology. I think all of the Camp Cretaceous fans assumed that's what it was in Dominion, but it was nice to get confirmation that that's what it was. And so we know exactly when in Dominion that's happening. In that same episode, we got the power going out, and I assume that's when Claire and Ellie, knock out the power with the axe. And when it came back on in the movie, it wasn't off for a very long time. We find out Brooklyn is the one that turned it back on. So that was really cool. And then, of course, in episode 8, we get to see the end of the final dinosaur fight from Dominion and the helicopter flying away with all of the Dominion characters. And, of course, the camp fan was going to take that helicopter to get out, but it was already gone. It was taken by the other characters. But it was really cool to see the end, the very tail end of the fight, like after the Giga was already killed. And I know some people had concern that they weren't going to show the Giga corpse because of that small clip in the trailer where it was only Rexy and the Therizinosaurus. But we did get to see the dead body laying there, and that was really cool. And again, visually very cool with it being dark in the rain, and all of the lighting and the appearance of the rain scenes and the fire scenes were just so cool and so beautiful. And, I really enjoyed just watching the season and taking in and just being in awe of everything about it. And I've said it a few times, and I said it in the spoiler free. It was just so well done. I really loved the season, and I think part of what's pushing me that this might be my favorite of them all is not just that it was a really good story and I wanted to keep watching, but everything about the way it was made just, is significantly better than season 3 of Camp Cretaceous. And I understand, they had a bigger budget and things were improved and upgraded, and that probably had a lot to do with it, but it was really, really well done. I can't think of anything wrong with it from my perspective. You may have issues with it or things, that weren't right for you, but it was just so darn good, And there were other little things. Oh, something I forgot that I mentioned in my spoiler free that I didn't talk about yet is dinosaurs. I said there were a lot of dinosaurs, and yeah, there were a lot of dinosaurs. The scene I was talking about was the remote herding. Everything from them being outside running, and then in particular when they were inside the containment facility, there were just dinosaurs everywhere. That must have been a chore to animate. There was just so many dinosaurs on the screen at the same time. And I don't know if you guys noticed it, but I noticed it immediately. They finally added the Triceratops to the series. It took them 9 seasons of the show, but they added the Triceratops, and that was really cool to see because I know it's something people have been wanting since the very beginning of Camp Cretaceous. So great to see the Triceratops added. Very unexpected because they added the big 3 from Dominion to it, so I didn't think they were going to have any other new models. But it was great to see the Triceratops. I loved it. And of course, in episode 9, at the very end, we get the other two T-Rexes. I can only assume it was Buck and Doe. Totally forgot to ask Scott if that's who they were supposed to be, but we can assume that based on what we know about the ending of Dominion. And I thought it was really cool. Maybe you thought it was cheesy to basically recreate the end of Jurassic Park with the raptors attacking Rexy. But then the other two T-Rexes come in with the assist and help out. And I thought that whole scene was just really cool. And it distracted everybody enough that, our characters were able to get away and drive through and get out of there. What else really stood out to me? Oh, I had mentioned that it can answer some of the questions people had in Dominion. The one that I immediately thought of was people asking, like, if all the dinosaurs were being remotely herded, how did the Dilophosaurus get in that tunnel to kill Dodgson? And now we find out the Dilophosaurus got in the tunnel because they were following Ben and Kenji. So that was a really cool connection. Something else that I can't say this is what happened or what was going on, but to me, this is what it seems like, that when the trailer came out, people were saying, like, why is the Giga so fast? It's slow and lumbering every time we see it in Dominion, but it's running after a Jeep. And we find out that the kids run its foot over. So that's probably the explanation as to why it's slow in Dominion, because it had its foot run over by a Jeep. So I thought that was, really cool. Kind of a nod to Dominion is the Giga chomping on the cage of the ladder with Yaz in it, which is almost exactly the same as what it does to Maisie in Dominion. So that was really cool. Not necessarily a Dominion connection or answer, but a connection back to Camp Cretaceous is when Kenji and Brooklyn find the Gigatooth, and she gives it to Darius and says, like, hey, maybe you can make a new necklace. And you see at the very end of the show, he did make a necklace out of it. And I thought that was really cool. And, speaking of the very end, one thing I was really hoping for is that we were going to get Brooklyn's last name, and we didn't. So we're probably never going to know what it is unless someone asks Scott that. I don't know. Maybe any of the other people that interviewed him, did any of you ask him what Brooklyn's last name was? I don't know. Does she even have one? I had way too many things going on to think about these little questions to ask him, but maybe if I get the opportunity to chat with him again, I can ask him some of these fun, silly little questions. But it was cool seeing her as a more natural, normal person. I don't want to cut her down in any way by calling her normal, but she has her natural hair color. She did get a new prosthesis, which looked really cool. It was, rainbowy in color, and the hand spun around, which was kind of awesome. But she just seemed comfortable and herself. She wasn't, chasing after stories anymore. She was just being chill and, doing whatever. And it was cool to hear they were all working with the biosyn cleanup. And it's really unfortunate what Rebirth did with the story, because now it's everything these kids are doing, they're not kids at this point, they're young adults. But everything they're doing is for nothing a few years in the future. And, that upset me a little bit, that they're doing this good. They're helping, and they're working, and they're cleaning up, and they're working with Wu on making the world a better place. And Rebirth undoes it all. So that's very unfortunate. What else about the ending? Brooklyn, mending things with her dad's, which I would understand. They would be furious at her for faking her death, but at the same time thrilled that she's alive. So that relationship healing was great. Speaking of family relationships, we find out what caused the rift between Sammy and her family. And back in season 1, I think everyone assumed it had something to do with her relationship with Yaz and her family probably not approving. Well, in season 4, we find out it's because of their shady dealings with Biosyn. And I did not see that coming, especially after the whole Manticore story in Camp Cretaceous. But it was good to get an answer to that question. It's a question I never expected to get an answer to, but it was nice that we did get an answer to it. And it was nice that at the end of the show that she was slowly working on, building that relationship back up with her family. So that was really cool too. We got to see Smoothie grow up a little bit, and that was fun and cute. And I would love if they continued in some sort of way, even if it was just like little shorts. They don't have to have a whole new series. A movie would be really cool. But man, it would be so cool if DreamWorks can like put together little shorts. They don't even have to bring back the voice actors. Like there doesn't even have to be dialogue in them. Like we could just see like scenes of what's happening in the valley between the different dinosaurs. Or you can even have like Darius doing something there in Biosyn Valley helping out, but he doesn't even have to talk. So if you don't, want to bring back the voice actors for anything, that would be kind of a cool way to keep things going, because I'll be perfectly honest with you, I am not ready to say goodbye to these characters. It didn't really hit me until the second time watching the season that after the final episode was over and they show that picture at the end before the credits start rolling, I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And even though you kind of had that feeling at the end of Camp Cretaceous, there was always that there's so much more to tell. And there is more to tell. And in different things, Scott has mentioned that he has an idea for something between Dominion and Rebirth. But it really sounds like there are no plans to do that. And you can kind of tell by the way they did the end of this show that they assumed this was the last time we were going to see these characters. And I had mentioned in my spoiler-free review that I was very satisfied with the ending. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how they were going to end it. And I'm really glad that they left it with a happy ending. That everyone was okay. They were all together. They were happy. All of the relationships and problems were resolved. And they deserved it. They've been through so much. But we spent 5 years with these characters. We watched them grow up. We watched them mature. We watched them change as people and become young adults and make decisions, good and bad, sometimes reckless. But I mean, we spent half a decade with these characters, and these shows have meant a lot to me, and I'm sure some of you, and I'm definitely not ready to say goodbye to them. So that's part of the reason I'm going to keep this podcast going. There's a lot to talk about. I can go into detail about certain aspects of season 4, and maybe I'll do that for the next, few episodes, just while season 4 is fresh for everybody. But I've got a lot of other things that I want to do. I've got some interviews lined up. I already did the interview with Scott, and that's going to be posted next week or in a few days. We'll see. I haven't decided exactly when, but I have some follow-up interviews with people I've interviewed before that it's like, now that the show is over, let's chat again. I have something else that I just started working out with somebody that I'm really looking forward to. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll just try to coordinate that and get some time with that. I've got some inquiries out about some new interviews. Hopefully those can work out. It would be great. There are more people I want to talk to and thank, for making this show. But I think that wraps up, my spoiler thoughts and first reaction opinions about this show. I guess it's not really first reaction because I watched it 3 times. But like I said, I recorded something that was just more of a bulleted list going down episode by episode, and it felt very robotic. So I didn't like it. So hopefully this was okay for you guys. This was more my style of talking about things. And if you have any topics you would like me to cover, leave a comment on the video or hit me up on social media at JP_Campcast on Twitter or at Cretaceous Campcast on Instagram. And, leave a comment on something or message me directly and say, hey, what do you think about this? And if it's a good enough topic for me to talk for 10, 15 minutes or something about, I can do an entire episode on that to cover what people want to talk about. And let's keep the conversation going about season 4, because I do think it was a very fantastic season and I loved everything about it. And I'm definitely going to watch it again. But I think I want to go back and start from season 1 now and watch through the whole thing and really appreciate everything about it, and then see what little things I could pick up from early on that kind of pay off, in later seasons. And, pick up on a lot of the little things Eric had mentioned too. So it'll be fun to pay attention to a lot of the visuals and the subtleties and stuff like that. So that about wraps it up for this. Like I said, I've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Nothing is 100% scheduled yet. I just have kind of vague times that I'm doing stuff. So after the interview with Scott is released, if I go a week or so without publishing anything, I'm sorry about that. But don't worry, the podcast isn't going away. I've got that stuff. I've got that cool little side project that I've been hinting at for a month or two. And I want to get that started now that the show is over and it's behind us. And I think you'll enjoy that. Well, hopefully you'll enjoy it. Once I start doing it, it could end up being a complete disaster. We'll see. But I hope everyone really enjoyed season 4. Leave some comments. Let me know what you thought about the season. Let me know what you want to talk about. And we can keep on chatting about season 4. Because like I said, I thought it was fantastic. And once again, thank you so much to DreamWorks for giving me the opportunity to watch the season early and to make some content ready for you guys, both the spoiler free when the review embargo lifted and this one right when the season drops, that I was able to have something to talk about so you all can immediately listen. And hopefully it was after you watched the show and I didn't completely ruin it for you. I gave you plenty of warning at the beginning of the episode. So if you listened all the way through and you didn't watch the show, you have nobody to blame but yourself. But that is everything for this episode, and thank you all so much for your support and love and following and subscribing, because it's because of you guys I keep on going, and it's because of you I was able to watch this early and make some content for you guys. So thank you once again to all of you. I love you all, and I've made some incredible friends because of these animated shows, and I'll never forget anything about these and what it's meant to me these last 5 years. So have a great one, everybody. Stay safe, stay Jurassic, and until next time, so long.